the first call is usually a double tap. If agents on this call listening aren't doing the double tap, change that immediately. It works like a charm. A consumer sees an unknown number calling, right? Maybe they don't pick up, but if they see it called back to back, it creates
Like,
urgency. Maybe it's an emergency. It works like a charm. It works even on me, and I'm the one advising on it, but I can't resist.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Ask the Experts, where we bring on people that are literally shaping the industry and shaping the future of insurance sales and marketing. And today's guest is somebody who's not just observing the digital transformation of the industry, but he's right in the middle of building it. We were just having a great conversation about all the innovation and what they've been doing. And our guest today is none other than Andrew Rasson. He's the Director of Strategic Partnerships at SmartFinancial, which many of you are familiar with. And if you're not, you need to get to know these guys. Over the past 8 years, he's worked closely with some of the highest producing insurance agencies in the country, analyzing not just their leads, but their follow-up strategies, their sales processes, and of course, lead handling systems to uncover what actually drives conversions within the agency. He currently leads a team of 10 producers and is responsible for spearheading new business and revenue growth inside a company that's at the cutting edge of internet lead generation. Andrew brings a super rare mix of strategic insight and an in the trenches sales knowledge acumen, right? Like actually understanding how do the leads translate into a sales team, and then how does that translate to new business. So, whether we're going to be talking about a lot of things today, digital marketing, funnels, TCPA compliance, or managing producers at scale, he's somebody that, I'm definitely excited to learn from. I hope you guys are as well. And we're going to be diving deep today on all things leads and conversions. So let's jump right into it. Hey, Andrew, welcome to Ask the Experts. How are you?
Good, Andy. Thanks so much for having me, and congrats on the 1 year on the pod. You guys are killing it.
Thank you. Yeah, it happened like what seems like overnight, and definitely appreciate that. And I think I've known you for 4 or 5 years now, and had the pleasure of seeing you guys consistently evolve. I was just behind the scenes here telling Andrew that, we talk with thousands of agencies a year. And so we get the raw feedback from what's working, what's not working. And one of the things I told Andrew is that the feedback we've been getting on SmartFinancial, the impact they've been able to have has been massive. So it's been really cool to see you guys don't ever get complacent, and you're always looking to, meet agents where they need it the most. So one of the things I want to dive into before we get into the science of leads and all these other areas is just a little bit about you. Reading a little bit about your background. You've been at this for 8 years. And prior to that, though, I'd be really curious what attracted you to the insurance space, the lead game, and how you kind of found yourself, if you could rewind 8 or 9 years, like what was happening in your life before SmartFinancial?
Yeah, marketing always attracted me. I mean, when I went to college, I was like, okay, I want to do marketing. I want to look into, the growth of your business outside of what you can do internally with just your team, your sales producers, right? What can you do to drive in business? So what I was attracted to about SmartFinancial was they were at that time, I mean, 8 years ago, a startup, and technically we're still a startup. Because we're a privately held company, but we are the largest privately held company in the space, which we actually take a lot of pride in.
Wow.
But yeah, so I saw an opportunity to help grow with the company. So when I joined, it was 40 employees, and now we're at 400. So yeah, we were able to really scale, and it's due to the fact that we like you mentioned. I mean, we've been delivering on what we've been saying we are going to deliver on since day one, and that allows for that growth, right? It allows for that higher customer count on a daily basis, more revenue, more cash flow coming in for us to be able to hire. And we've got the largest team of account managers in the space with over 130 at this point. We've got almost 140 account managers that, work directly with agents. So I saw this as like a crazy good opportunity just to grow my career. And I was actually 24 years old when I joined. So I had a couple of years of experience with another marketing company prior to this. But I said to myself, like, this is where I can, really root myself. And it was true. I mean, so I started out in the inside sales role, where, as you mentioned, so now I manage a team doing that inside sales role. But I started doing it. There wasn't as much of a structure back then because, like I said, it was really, really startup feel. So I ended up building my own structure to what this sales process looks like, which applies actually to a lot of insurance sales as well, and grew my skill set. The leadership team saw that was really valuable and put me in this position to where not only do I run the team, but I spearhead a lot of our conferences, webinars, all the business development efforts, partnerships with companies in the same space, like Team Hired, like Ricochet. So I think this has just been one of the best opportunities for someone in my shoes as a new college grad that was attracted to marketing, to find a company that specializes in digital marketing that was on the cusp of something big, right? So it's been a pleasure.
Man, that's incredible. And one of the things that we're going to be diving through today is kind of like the science of lead generation. And you came into the business with this curiosity. You've been in at a strategic level, at a ground level, everything in between. So yeah, please don't mind if I'm coming out with questions that might seem very rudimentary, but I want to make sure that we appeal to both the super experienced agents that have bought internet leads for years and the ones that are maybe on the fence and they're trying to understand this game. And if they're anything like me, sometimes they just need a literal walkthrough of like what actually is happening here. So I'd be really curious from a high level, how are internet leads typically generated in 2025? And also like along with that, is there any changes to that? Like in the last couple of years, has it changed, or has this been the same way today that it was 10 years ago in terms of like literally, Andrew, like where are they generated from? What's physically happening to generate that opportunity?
That's such a good question, because it is something that agents scratch their head about, especially when they're getting leads that may be under a different expectation, or what I mean. Sometimes they're wondering, like, how did this person even get to me if maybe they didn't even have any interest at all. And that's where we try to stand aside, right, by generating our own leads in-house. So that's one of the big things that Smart Financial does, is we are not an aggregator, which most of our competitors in the industry are. We're not. So what an aggregator is they buy leads from other sources, they resell them. It's not a bad business model at all. But what we believe is that if we can have our control over exactly what the ad messaging is, and the quote funnel, and the technology, and the distribution, and all that process, it just allows for more consistency. And at Smart Financial, we're kind of control freaks, right? We don't want to relinquish that control. But I love that you asked that, because understanding how this consumer gets to you is what's going to allow for that better connection from the producer to that consumer. And there's multiple different ways that you can what we call drive traffic in this industry, right? Media buying is the biggest. So pay per click is going to be the most common method of how lead generation companies are actually driving traffic to their websites. So to touch on your second ask, which is how has it changed? Well, there's an ecosystem of publishers out in the digital realm, and I'm sure agents have probably heard that word publisher. What is a publisher? Well, basically a publisher is a company or a website that can publish your ad, right, or house your ad, right? So you can have your ad in the banner, or native ads, and so on. So as this ecosystem of publishers grow and grow and grow, it allows for more access to clicks, or more access to purchasing clicks, right? Which is the main model of how we drive traffic. So, excuse me. So there's a few different ways. There's search engine marketing, which a lot of people confuse with search engine optimization. So there's a big difference between SEM, which is search engine marketing, and SEO, which is search engine optimization. Some folks say, hey, are you paying for SEO? you can't pay for SEO.
You build
Right?
SEO.
You build SEO. So search engine optimization is the natural configuration of your site, which is relevant to the search that consumer is doing. Whereas search engine marketing is you could just directly pay to be at the forefront, no matter how relevant your site is to that search, right? So leveraging both is important, but how do you get optimized with search engine optimization? Well, what Google does and Yahoo and Bing and these search engines is they analyze your website. First off, it's how relevant is your content to the search, right? So relevance is a big thing. But then there's things like speed rates, refresh rates. How valuable is your site? Are people hanging on it? Are they actually filling out the form? Are they spending time looking at your website, reading articles, things like that? That shows Google that this is a valuable website, because obviously Google is a very reputable company. They don't want to put websites up that aren't going to add value to that customer or that consumer, because then people are going to stop going to Google if they're not getting value from it.
Mhm.
So what we do is we are constantly doing industry research on what people are searching. For example, maybe someone's buying a car and they're trying to figure out, what's better between a Hyundai or a Kia, right? We're going to write an article about the difference between Hyundai and Kia on smartfinancial.com. So we've got dozens and dozens of articles. I mean, we're writing one at least every other day, right? Where we can drive traffic in with a relevant topic. Like, we'll put it in the title, right? What's the difference between a Hyundai and a Kia? Because that's literally what people are typing into the search bar, which is going to make our page relevant. And then guess what's on the banner? Request a quote for auto insurance, right? So then they'll go through, they'll fill out a detailed questionnaire. So that's how we leverage SEO. We indirectly pay for it by paying this team of content writers to be able to have these topics be relevant. And then on the other side, search engine marketing, you're just paying Google per click, which it's pricey, but it's important. You got, being on the forefront. Whenever you see an ad next to the website or sponsored next to the website, that's when that person is directly paying. And then there's other things like affiliate marketing, where there are a lot of other websites and companies that leverage SEO and search engine marketing that maybe we can piggyback off of, right? So companies like CarMax, someone's buying a car, maybe they need auto insurance. Zillow, someone might be buying a home, they'll need home insurance. So we want to be able to pay per click with Zillow, or Credit Karma, right? Where someone may be checking their credit score because they're buying a home and they need insurance. So these are the ways that you can drive actual high intent customers without offering anything else that doesn't have to do with insurance, which unfortunately some of the companies in the space do.
Man, so insightful. And I'm going to fill in a few gaps as well for the audience to just piggyback what you said, because in 2019, I was in a company. I was helping run all the training, the sales team, the marketing, the call center, kind of the right hand to the owner. And he came in and he actually partnered with the guy that ran all the marketing for Black Rifle Coffee Company and helped them go viral organically with SEO. Guy's name is Jason. He's a brilliant guy. And he came in and basically became our consultant and helped us build two things. One was paid Google marketing, pay-per-click ads. The other one was SEO. And a couple of things I want to just really put some appreciation for what you guys do. The margin for error is so small when you do paid marketing, especially on Google. What people don't see when you peel back that onion is that actually there's also like a bidding war that goes on behind the scenes for like what other competitors are bidding for the same search terms. Even if you're going to pay for an ad, doesn't guarantee you the number one spot. The other things they'll measure is how you're bidding against others. And the one that I learned from him that was wild was, even if you're paying to drive somebody, let's say, to a landing page that's like advertising an auto policy, the load time of that page and also the relevance of the information will actually impact your ranking on the sponsorship. So if you want to really be a killer with ads, you got to be really good at both these things. You can't just, you can pay your way in, but to be great, you have to pay your way in and be very intelligent about, are we measuring like Google benchmarks to see that the page load time is under so many milliseconds? And it's really tough to do on your own, but it's also really tough to do at scale, because if you try to go out with a $2,000 a month budget of your own, you're like, I'm not giving Andrew $2,000. I'm going to go do it on my own. You can get into wars with companies that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're just going to eat your lunch. Like
millions.
Millions. There you go. You'll be just cast to the wayside. And this is a space that if you try to do it on your own, the cost of acquisition, the ROI, very, very difficult to achieve on your own. And then also on the SEO side, the science of SEO, right? There's two things to it. There's, actually like a science to how many words in it, how many relevant keywords. There's scientists, they have, like, I call them like information scientists that are studying these tables and charts and rankings, and they're building these very, very intentionally, not just to read well, but to actually rank and build relevance. But then the amount of content you need to put out, it can take a company 90 days to see their first SEO results come in. So it's like, this is a perfect example of why to outsource this type of thing, because to go run this operation on your own, it's a full-time job. Like, you might as well just hire a full-time marketer who's an expert who can do this. But those are some of the things that go into, like, as you're talking to me, I'm going through it like, wow, you guys are playing that game. So it's like, you're more of like a, you think leads, but to be a good lead company, you actually have to be a great tech company, and you got to understand the game out there. So one of the things I'm really curious about, though, is like, when we get deeper into this and it's like, okay, cool. I'm bought into the idea that I give you guys some paper, you go out, you use your expertise to build this for me. Obviously, one of the big question marks for a lot of agents is, I can pay for a $2 lead or a $6 lead or a $20 lead. And I'll hear from agents sometimes that, they're honing in their filters. I also hear from some agents the opposite, which is like, I get the same quality lead, whether I pay $5 or 20, so I'll spend 5. What I'm really curious about is your process for how to correct or improve the intent of the leads when you work with an agent, and just the strategy when you come in, clean slate, never worked with them before. What does that process look like to kind of get your bearings and then refine it? And like, if I'm an agent who's saying, Andrew, half the leads you're sending me are non-qualified, or they're not our customer, or the close rate is off from another vendor, what are you generally looking at first to say, hey, this is what we can do to build a better, higher intent lead for you and your team?
Yep. First off, great insights there. You clearly know exactly what you're talking about. So that was awesome. Excuse me. To answer that, that's a big reason why we have such a big team of account managers, right? We want to make sure that we're giving everybody that care and that consultation. So that first step is really understanding the agency, right? Where in that scale between, that $2 to $20 should they sit? And a lot of it depends on the tenure of the agency, right? If they're a larger agency that has more staff, that maybe they can take more volume, they probably shouldn't be paying for a $20 lead or more, like you mentioned earlier on the call. Understanding what their process, their workflow of working leads, maybe they don't have the best practices in place, and they shouldn't be working internet lead at all. And they should be maybe working a warm transfer that directly comes in, where, they don't have to have the legwork and the processes, the technology, the automation, all the stuff that you guys do, right, with your telemarketing, to be able to get that lead on the phone. I mean, that's why they would work with a company like Team Hired. So there's a whole lot of consultation that has to go into it first to truly understand like where that agency sits. And then diving into, first off, like what products that agency needs to write more of, and then pointing them down that right direction, because filters, different lines of insurance, those are going to change cost per lead, right? For example, home insurance leads, they're going to always be a little bit more of an investment than auto insurance leads, because of the fact that agents are writing more premium or more competitive with them and so on. And then even in certain states, sometimes the home lead in Texas is going to be a lot more of an investment than the home lead in Arizona, right? Mm-hmm. Due to the layout, the market, the insurance market, and the RMPs maybe for that state, for Allstate or the carrier that you're working with. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but having an expert like an account manager to consult and really figure out the right direction for that agency to go is, I think, the most important part. And then helping that agency optimize. So to your point, right? Like, how do we get them optimized in a better spot? Is we want to be able to have them be receptive to sharing their analytics with us, right? We want to know what their cost per quote is, what their contact rate is, right? What their cost per acquisition is at the end of the day, how much premium they wrote from that acquisition, and what the profit margin looks like. So diving into all those numbers helps us optimize, because we'll be able to share insights with, okay, you're actually converting more with these campaigns, with these filters, right? So diversification is a term that we use that is really, really impactful for agencies, where you don't want to just target one profile. At, let's say we charge you $6 and you're getting a couple filters with this one profile. Let's try 6 different profiles at different price points, maybe some lower, some a little bit higher, with different filter sets, and analyze what profiles are converting more of. But not just that, our system's also going to automatically read that sourcing, which is what we just talked about, how the lead is generated, because there's multiple different ways and there's multiple different companies that we may work with to pay per click, right? So what pay per click campaigns and sources are driving better conversions and better traffic for you, right? So that, I mean, it all comes full circle, right? When you're incorporating all of these different variables, and then at the end of the day, the account manager is going to not only dive into that optimization, but they're going to dive into your best practices and figure out, like, what are you actually doing with the lead? You know, why is this agency down the road from you with the same carrier purchasing leads from the same process that we do, having a different result and having more success, right? What are they doing differently? There's a big gap sometimes between the successful and the not successful, and it all falls back on the processes, the execution on that lead when that lead comes in. So we dive pretty deep with agencies on that.
That's awesome. And I'm a curious kid. Before I get into my next serious question, I got a kid question for you.
There you go.
What's the most amount of money somebody spends with you guys on a monthly basis for leads? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh. Well, so we have different levels of a customer. So some of our customers are just agencies that purchase the lead for their own agency. Some of the customers want to run their own telemarketing company, or purchase leads to generate warm transfers for agents, and they'll buy hundreds of thousands of leads, right? So I'm assuming that you'll probably want to stick with more of the agent buying leads for their own agency. And I mean, some of these guys are paying upwards of $70,000-$80,000 a month and taking 20, 30, 40 calls, warm transfers a day, or sometimes 1,000 leads a day, you know, because maybe they're their own agency, but they have a big team of telemarketers to generate warm transfers for their own producers, and they do it all internally. So, I mean, the budget opens up when you're able to see a profitable cost per acquisition and a profitable experience. You find that money, right? So when we're able to show agents that, they you know, throw as much as they can, right?
Yeah, and the reason I ask too is, like, I want people to hear that there's actually agents out there spending 70 to 80 grand a month on internet leads with one vendor. Nobody with that kind of cash flow, that can afford that kind of cash flow, is throwing that money in a garbage bin. So that is, to me, always the proof in the pudding. When I talk to an agent who's like, I talked to one in Vegas yesterday, 2 days ago. He's like, yeah, we're at about a $50,000 a month lead budget. You know, he said it very casually. New agent, 6 months in, already selling over 550 items a month. And he's driving this growth early on in the business by paying his way in. And, you know, long term, this is not a, you know, touch and go business where it's a one-time payment. We have renewals. We have, for a lot of you, equity in your book. And a lot of times, you know, this is actually seen, at least from the school I come from, as a investment into the business. It's not money that's going in the stock market. I'm not investing in an oil field. I'm investing into my business, and it's going to pay you multiples for years and years and years. So, like, the way I see it, that's somebody who's investing 70 to 80 grand, but that's going to reap hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars month over month for, you know, many years to come. Which brings me to my next question, which is, when they're out there talking to different companies, because there's you guys, there's ones that are, you know, not directly driving the traffic themselves, but they're like an aggregate that you spoke about. As they're going out there, what kind of red flags should agents be looking for when they're, you know, talking to a company like yours or any of these other lead vendors, that you would recommend they go in with a clear head to avoid the, you know, the blow up situation with the wrong vendor?
It's a great question. I think asking about how their leads are generated is something really important. How they're actually obtaining this traffic, and when agents ask us that, we get really excited, right? Because we know that that's our differentiating factor, along with, what's the care look like, right? Do I get a dedicated account manager? So I think most of the companies in the space, you do have to spend a certain amount to get someone dedicated to you, where they're going to help you run reviews, they're going to help optimize, they're going to help train you and your staff on working leads and best practices. If you spend $50 a month or $20,000 a month with Smart Financial, you're going to get that expert, that dedicated account manager. And we carry something called we do something called a smart journey, where we take you down, and we're making sure that you're getting the reviews, you're getting the trainings. There's this step-by-step process that our team has to follow to be able to cater to an agent, and it doesn't matter how much you spend on our platform. So asking those questions, I think, if you're not getting an account manager and you have to call into like a 1-800 line to be able to get service or get care, that would be a red flag, along with if that company isn't generating their leads in house, right? Maybe the majority of the leads that they're purchasing are from other companies. I mean, you can imagine if you're a burger shop, right? You're selling cheeseburgers, and you're buying your meat from 25 different farms, right? The quality is going to differ based on the farm, and it's going to be a part of that aggregate mix, where some are going to be good, some are going to be bad, right? We don't want to risk that. We want all of our processes to be in line so that it's really consistent and that you're getting that great quality the whole way through. So I would definitely look at those two things, right? How is your lead generated, and what's the care look like? And then obviously, things like price per lead, that's going to make a big impact on your return on the investment.
Absolutely. No, and I love what you said about like split testing as well. And like even with you guys, trying a variety of things and measuring it, but to be able to have the support every single time, somebody who looks at this stuff all day is so, so valuable. We just launched kind of an outbound caller with some leads in one of our businesses last week. And that's the first thing we did, right? Is like, let's break down 5 different categories of lead. Let's go look at the contact rate, the conversion rates, the interest levels, where he gets burnt out and where he wins. And then we're going to refine from there. So that's huge. And the fact that you guys control the process from A to Z and you have the support piece is massive. Now, I always think of a lead company kind of like a pitcher that is going to try to throw a fastball or maybe an easy ball, right up the middle, right? Perfectly, just so they can hit home runs. That's the goal. And we know there's some curveballs and there's some random leads, you're always going to get that, right? But at the end of the day, I know that you guys probably also really need the agency to be well-oiled machine and be able to take these leads and work them the proper way. I'm sure you've seen it hundreds of times where an agency actually has to grow into the leads. It's like, okay, we got the lead,
yes,
but now we got to get the team. So I'm really curious, especially the top performing agents and producers, like what are some of the non-negotiables in like lead response and lead follow-up that, like, if you were coaching a new agent, these are the staples to what you have to do to get ROI from these? What are you instructing them to do?
Yes, and that actually starts on our sales side. So before the customer even signs up with Smart Financial, we have to have those kind of conversations, because we will turn away agents if they don't have the right setup or they don't have the right attitude or the right mindset, right, to be able to work with this program, because that is not beneficial for either parties, right? We don't want to bring on a customer that isn't going to succeed, and you don't want to come on board if you're not going to succeed. So on that sales side, initially, we're gonna discover what the setup is and what the attitude and the mindset is of that agency. If they have the right setup and we've been able to have that consultation conversation with them, amazing. We're gonna bring them on board. If they don't have the right setup, we're gonna guide them in the right direction. What does that setup look like, right? Well, if you don't have all of these boxes checked, automation, technology, CRM, dedicated producers or telemarketers, speed to lead, looking at the follow-up process and making sure that you're engaging with it and being consistent with it, looking at your numbers and tracking your cost per quote and cost per acquisition and in contact rate and all that. If you aren't checking off all those boxes, you're going to need a telemarketing company. You're going to need a team hired, right? You're going to need someone to be able to call those leads for you to get them on the phone, because I promise, if you don't have a CRM that has some automation involved in it, right, like Ricochet, if you don't have a dedicated telemarketer or a producer that acts as a telemarketer in tandem with a good follow-up process, you will not be able to get these leads on the phone effectively. It won't work, right? And then guess who's to blame? Smart Financial's to blame, right?
Of
So,
course, it's
of
your
course,
fault.
exactly. So we try to be as proactive as possible to set that right expectation and, really point the agent in the right direction. So a lot of agencies do have that right setup. A lot of captive carriers, they provide a CRM, they provide a lot of insights on this stuff. But if an agent is open to it, we're going to train them, and we have a lot of recommendations on how many times you should be calling these leads, texting, emailing. What are some of the common objections that come along specifically with internet leads that you won't get from referrals or other marketing campaigns that you need to be prepared for, right? We actually call it smart practice. So it's a play on smart financial. We feel like we're geniuses over here, so everything's smart. so
Love
so
it.
smart practice it's been an amazing resource for agents. They always speak highly of it, and I want to, if I can, I want to just highlight a couple things from smart practice, like the follow
Please.
up cadence. Right, we advise on a cadence call. We call it 3-3-3-3. Easy to remember. It's threes. It's 4 threes. So on the first day, you're calling that lead at least 3 times, and this is specifically with internet leads, right? And of course, until contact. So three calls on the first day. The first call is usually a double tap. If agents on this call listening aren't doing the double tap, change that immediately. It works like a charm. A consumer sees an unknown number calling, right? Maybe they don't pick up, but if they see it called back to back, it creates urgency. Maybe it's an emergency. It works like a charm. It works even on me, and I'm the one advising on it, but I can't resist when I see the back to back calls, right? So that's a really great best practice. And then after day 1, if you haven't gotten them on the phone, you're calling twice a day for the next 3 days. So that's the second 3. So for 3 days, you're calling twice a day. For the next 3 weeks, you're calling once a day. And then for the next about 2-ish months to stay within that TCPA window. So we typically call it 3 months, but of course we got to stick within 90 days with TCPA. You're calling once every 3 days.
Okay.
So I know it sounds like a lot of dialing, but when you're using Ricochet, like, it's so easy to do, right? When you're using technology, yeah. And 30 seconds go by, dial, they didn't pick up, you're on to the next one, right? So you're able to really do this with ease. And if you're feeling like this is bombarding the customer, we have to really change that mindset. The most successful agencies don't feel that way. What they feel is that I'm calling this much because I know I'm the best option for this consumer, because you know that they're going to buy insurance from someone, right? And many times if they don't buy insurance from you, it's probably going to be a mistake, right? They're not going to be getting the best care. They're not going to be getting the best coverage. You've got to have pride in your agency that you're delivering the best of the best, right? And that's what's driving you to do this. So if you get on the phone with that consumer after your 50th dial and they say, "Oh, you've called me so much, I'm annoyed," that's the kind of thing to translate is, "Hey, I get it. I'm sorry about that. But the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to hopefully prevent you from making a mistake and going with a company that's not going to give you the care, not going to give you the right coverage. And I know that we're doing the best in the industry to do that. So that was what was propelling me to help you," right? Because that's all that this is about. You have to have the mindset that it's not about getting the policy and hitting your variable compensation and this and that. Sure, that's an indirect of it, but the point of what we're doing and why we can go to sleep happy at night is because we're helping people and we're actually doing justice, right? And that's the mindset that's going to propel us to have these kind of call activities. And then you're texting and emailing consistently as well. We have a great cadence for that, but that was just kind of a taste of what we train agents on.
That's incredible. Thank you for that, man. That's so valuable. And at the end of the day, like, you start to look at that level of conviction. I just did a training call with about 20 producers, and we had some big agents. There was a $20+ million guy out of Jersey. We had a big agent out of Texas on there, and everybody came to full agreement that, and again, producers, couple of agents helping me out with this training call. The team needs to wake up every day and get resold on, hey, we're here not to get a commission, but to help people. And I know this is so like rudimentary, but it's crazy how many people fall into the trap of just habit and they just treat it like a numbers game. The thing I always like to tell producers is it may seem like a number to you because it's your 6,542nd customer you've talked to, but for them, it's their first experience with your agency. And you have to treat each of those opportunities with like a certain level of care. And like, I love the way that you would outwardly say like, well, look, the reason that I called you 50 times, right, is to actually help. That's going to take training. That's going to take process. And like you guys actually provide that for agencies, which is huge, because you see a lot, fail with it when they don't have those right processes or the right mindset in place. Exactly. One of the things that I'd be curious about when you look at these other things like texts, emails, maybe there's other areas as well. I don't know, social. I don't know if you recommend doing any sort of automation or outreach there. But if an agent came in and said, "Hey, Andrew, we've been calling leads for 5 years. I want to buy leads from you. But I'm wondering, like, does it make a big difference if we text and email these leads too? Will I see a big return, or is it not worth the trouble? Is it too risky? What do you generally recommend for an agency in terms of those other outreaches outside of a phone call?"
Yeah, no, great question. You're going to have to leverage those other areas of communication because not everybody picks up the phone. But guess what? So let's say we're on this pod right now, right? Let's say I get a phone call. I'm not going to pick it up, of course, but maybe I get a text and I might just take a look at that, right? Even though I'm unavailable. So it allows for you to get the information in front of this customer without having to actually make that contact. They can be busy. They can be busy and still be able to see your information, right? So what we advise is not total aggressiveness with these texts and emails like you would with calls. Calls, you really have to follow that cadence. But for the first 5 days, you're sending a text and an email every single day. Then on day 7, you're sending another text and email. Then on day 14, another text and email. And then once a month after that, right? So it's not as aggressive, but you're planting those seeds, right? And if you can plant that seed and someone calls you back from a text that's automated that you didn't even write out because it's a template, right? And it was seamless, it was easy, it was without any effort, then all of that investment of the basic automation that is going into this is so paying off, right? So texting and emailing is key. Now, in regards to, Facebook, social media advertising, things like that, I would say, heck yeah, like go for it. But we don't have any expertise on our side in recommending how to do that, right? What our expertise and what our specialty is when you get an internet lead, what do you do now, right? One piece of advice that I want to give to agents listening to this call: a lot of agencies, when they get a lead, they'll call that lead and they'll say, "Hey, is this Joe Smith? Oh, awesome. This is Andrew Rasson with Allstate Insurance. I'll be the one helping you with your quote. Let me go ahead and let's move forward with this," right? That's not bad, right? It's not terrible. But what we've seen work really well to build that connection, because we know consumer behavior, even when they filled out the form, they're going to say, "Oh, I didn't do it," or this or that. So what we advise agents to do is, instead of calling and saying, "Hey, is this Joe Smith?" you're calling and saying, "Hi, is this the resident of 123 Baker Avenue looking for a quote on the 2017 silver Toyota Corolla?" Right? It allows for that connection. Many times they're not going to say, "Oh, I didn't fill it out," because you've got all their information, right? Who filled this out?
That's smart.
And so you're inputting the information that they gave you into your introduction for them. So these things that actually work really, really effectively, and something to take it to the next level to really prove that you're actually getting a real lead. They filled it out. So what we do is we provide you with a link on our dashboard to TrustedForm. TrustedForm is a really great product from Active Prospect. It's really important in regards to getting consent from the consumer. That's one of the main functionalities of it, is making sure that you have a certificate of consent where this consumer actually opted in and asked for a quote, so we can avoid any TCPA issues. But what this does for agents is it shows you timestamps of them filling out the form, a screen recording of them and their mouse moving and the numbers typing in, their IP address, how long they spent filling out the form, even a link, the link that they clicked on to get to our web property, is all these insights that we're going to share with you that we haven't heard of any other company doing, but it gives that transparency to the agent that, okay, I'm buying a real lead. They actually did this and they did it in real time. We hear horror stories of buying leads from other companies and them saying, "Oh, I filled it out a month ago. How'd you get it? This, and that." You're going to see all of those insights, timestamps, and so on, which gives a lot of security for the agent.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I had no idea you guys did that. That's beautiful, and that makes so much sense. And I love calling with like the relevant information. Like in our business over at Team Hired, let's say an agency comes through and fills out a form, and they say like looking for 2 producers for my new agency in Alabama in October. Same thing on our team, right? Reach out, email, text, phone call. Like, hey, I'm calling you. I'm reaching out because I know you're looking for the 2 producers. You got to have them in by October. We can definitely help with that. And to your point, like when we measure the difference between that type of a response versus like, hey, I'm Andy with Team Hired, let's talk.
Right.
It's so much different. It starts off such a different conversation, which look, the thing too is that like you manage a team of producers within Smart Financial, right? And
Yep.
for those of you who have never managed or run a business to business team, which is what you guys are, a business that sells to businesses, it's tough to find great people and also
Yes.
get a large, like to get 10 people winning is a big deal. I've been involved in that, and it can be a lot, and it's a different game than business to consumer. So what I see is that you're in a position where you've obviously cracked the code to like effective sales leadership, management. And I'm assuming that probably 90% of what helps your team win with Smart Financial are the same lessons that can be passed on to agents. So I'd love to crack into kind of the psychology
Totally.
of like your top priorities when you manage your team and how you drive results. Because you guys, just like your agents, work leads too. You have to have processes in
Exactly.
place. So are there any like crossover there where you're like taking lessons from like your management of your team and then being able to pass that out to an agent, be like, look, I deal with the same thing you do. And like, here's what we do, that type of deal.
So funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of the training that we use to train agents is used during our sales training for our own internal team. Objections, yes, there are some that are specific to internet leads, but a lot of these objections can be applied to any industry, right? A lot of the rebuttals that you're using to overcome them, you can use with any industry. For example, I want to think about it. I want to shop around more. I want to talk to my spouse or my business partner, so on. This is built into our sales process, right? And it's also built into our training for agents. So it's great that you mentioned that, because there's a ton of crossover, right? Guess what we're doing? We're also using automation and auto dialers and dialing 200 leads a day, and doing the same things that we coach agents on, and having the right mindset of, yeah, I am calling your agency quite a bit, and there's a reason for that, right? I want to make sure you're making the right decision and not making a mistake and going with an aggregator and not getting the great results, right? So there's so much crossover, but I think agencies can do their best at having all the resources and having them available for their team. But what I think I see agencies making the mistake of when they're running their team is not dedicating time to the coaching. They do it sporadically. They do it based on, oh, this rep isn't doing that great, we need to do a coaching session. Or I just thought of something that's good to coach for them, so I'm going to call a meeting to coach them. Dedicate times. You should be doing individual one-on-one coaching with producers. That's something that we don't see as much with agencies, is weekly one-on-ones. This is what I do directly with my team, and it is so valuable. I have a set list of criteria that I look at for the prior week on what their numbers look like, what there are things that they want to talk about. Maybe we need to talk about things that they feel like they can improve on, right? So being able to spend the time, spend an hour a week with each of your producers, and being able to really give them the care from a supervisor, right? We take an approach of servant leadership. They don't work for me. We as managers work for them. So
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to be able to set them up for success? We're active listening on their calls constantly. So listening to calls, Jeremy Olson and his team, they have a really, really great session for agents to listen to about being a proponent to listen to your team's calls. So I love that.
Huh.
But really taking the time to dive into your own team. So if you are the agency owner and you're also managing this team of producers, it's going to be difficult. Expand your team a little bit. If you have someone that's dedicated to supervising this producing team, right? Maybe you've promoted a producer to this role. Yes, it's an additional cost. Yes, it's an additional employee, additional overhead. It is a fantastic return on your investment because you're going to get more out of those producers. It's a fact, right? When you have the right processes, you're giving them the weekly time where you're doing these one-on-ones with them. You're having that supervisor listen in on calls, being able to maybe even jump in and take over, right? Taking over calls is a big piece of what we see successful agencies do, as well as what we do. And then making sure that you're actually having a list of KPIs, not just the production numbers and the premium that their person is writing, but what's the vehicle? We always make the mistake of you're not hitting your numbers, writing the person up, whatever, firing them. But if we don't give them the actual action plan on what are the KPIs that are going to go into that production number, what is the vehicle to get there, then we're not doing them a service, right? So that's what I've learned quite a bit from my leadership team here at Smart Financial, from agencies that are extremely successful, that are running teams of 40, 50, right? Like one of the biggest agents out in Ohio that we work with, really understanding what they do to be able to help their team win, right?
Does his name start with a J?
It does start with a J.
Oh, very cool. So I love everything you're laying out. And like, just as an example for you, like investing the time to water the garden, like be with your team, be there to support them. None of what you said was like reprimand them. It was like, how can I help you be successful? How can I serve you? And that's so big. And then also just like having your numbers, not just for yourself, but I love that you put numbers in a group setting and like talk through the numbers and look at them. Numbers tell a very truthful story, and it's really easy to like paint things a certain way with words, but numbers tell a story. And so being able to sit down, whether it's looking at a trajectory of call activity or conversions or whatever, or a mix of products, that's exactly, I think, what needs to happen. But to your point, like maybe some of these agents need to say, look, I can't do it all. And I do need to take my top producer that I was nervous about losing anyway, because maybe they're getting bored here, and say, hey, buddy, like, great opportunity. I'm actually having you step up into a team lead position, lead trainings, enforce. We think the same way. So you're going to be my eyes in the sky. And then, this is an opportunity for you to make more, drive more sales through the team, et cetera. I think it's an awesome move for any agency. And that, every agent's thinking, like, not everybody, but they're thinking, I can't afford somebody for 80 grand a year base pay plus commission and this and that, because I've only got 2 or 3 people. It's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the guy or girl, you could do it this way, where they're making, 40 grand a year base plus commission. Last year, maybe they cleared 65, 70, and you come in and you bump their pay up to 55,000 a year base. Maybe you give them an override on the team production, so they get paid off the team's performance, and they continue producing so they can make commission. And now you help them bump their pay maybe from 60 to 90 or 90 to 100, but it's all through performance. And then that's just going to free up more capacity to have more cash flow and continue to hire and scale. So love all the feedback, Andrew.
Of course. No, you asked some really great questions on this pod. And I think it's going to be really valuable for agents listening in.
I think so too. And one thing I do not want to miss out before we go into the final leg of the show here is going to be a quick topic, but a big topic of TCPA. So we went through this whole moment where, there was like the one-to-one consent legislation. And I think it was like 48 hours before that was supposed to go through it. They pulled the plug on it. But I think it taught everybody a lot of really valuable lessons. People starting to understand a little more of consumer behavior. But more importantly, I think a lot of agents were freaked out. I don't want to get fired. I don't want to get a lawsuit. Right. I don't want to have my 30 years of work torn down because of one lead. And we've seen it happen. We've seen multi-million-dollar lawsuits around this. So I'd be curious for you, is like how is Smart Financial, staying ahead of TCPA regulations, helping agents stay protected? I mean, what's y'all's position on TCPA these days?
Yeah. Making sure you have the right legal consult is so important. Even for an agency, I would highly advise having, a legal counsel to be able to help you navigate. We've got an internal general counsel that he's been, working with TCPA for 20 plus years. He's an expert at it. He works directly with experts like Eric Troutman, who runs TCPAworld.com, and he's one of the biggest voices for TCPA for agencies in the country. So we spend a lot of our time and resources making sure that we're checking the boxes that go along with that compliance. And it's funny that you mentioned that one-to-one consent. law that got struck down 48 hours before it was about to go into effect. It was the biggest scramble in the lead industry. It's since the DNC list came out in 2003, right? It was the craziest time. So funny enough, Smart Financial decided to continue one-to-one consent, even without it being a mandatory regulation added to TCPA from the FCC. So during that time, everybody was running pilots. Companies in our space were already putting it into effect to see how it's going to work. We didn't want to wait till the last minute. As we were doing that, we were seeing better results. The consumer, when they have the power to select their carrier, guess who's going to benefit from that? The carrier that they've selected. When they call, there's a better connection. They don't have to hear the consumer say, I didn't want to talk to you, I didn't want to quote from you. They are clearly asking for that carrier to call them, right? So the producers just have a much better connection, higher conversion, maybe slightly less volume, because not every single time is that consumer going to select your carrier, but it wasn't enough of a volume dip for us to stop doing it and to just go back to normal business. So we decided to continue doing it. And still to this day, every lead that an Allstate agent gets, a Farmer's agent gets, a State Farm agent gets, the only time they'll ever get a lead from Smart Financial is when they'll have selected that specific carrier, right? So it's just leading to a much better result for the agency, as well as in that screen recording, you're going to be able to see the consumer do that. So when we provide you with that TrustedForm link, you got that video, you're going to see them selecting Allstate, and you're going to have that assurance yourself. So, we want to also jump ahead because it's likely going to go into effect. That's what a lot of talking heads are saying, is that come next year when they revisit, it's probably going to go into effect. So if we've been doing it for a year plus and agents are used to it, they're having success with it, our company has gotten used to it, our team is making it as efficient as possible to generate a lead like that because of all the time we spent doing it, we're going to have a leg up. So we'd prefer to be safer rather than sorry. And that's always going to be the rule of thumb with TCPA and regulations like this.
Absolutely, man. I would rather get a letter from the IRS than I would something about TCPA, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, I
I'd
hear
be
you.
like, oh, like the IRS is looking for like $1,000 mistake. But the TCPA stuff, I mean, literally bankrupts like agencies, carriers get. I saw one last year. I think even Allstate, the corporation, got a $20+ million fine they had to pay. The agent went out of business. The lead vendor went out of business. Big deal.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to do this stuff on your own, it's a lot, and it's just not worth the risk. And we didn't really dive into calling old leads and scrubbing leads. That's kind of a whole different topic, but
right.
I'm sure like if you guys connect with Andrew, he can help guide you guys through with his team and connect you with the right people on his team to kind of walk you through all of that to understand it better, which is, the final piece here is I really want to understand, first and foremost, like where can people engage with you? Where can they learn with you? Where can they, find leads with you, and just get a hold of, either Andrew or a Smart Financial? Like where can we send people, man?
Yeah, well, a great first step is going to smartfinancial.com. You'll be able to click on About Us for agents, and it's going to take you to our agent-facing platform. That's how you can get in touch with Smart Financial, period. But to get in touch with me, to get more insights on the things that we've discussed on the Smart Financial program itself, please shoot me an email. My email is A as in Apple, R as in Robert, A as in Apple, double S as in Sam, O as in Ocean, N as in Nancy, at smartfinancial.com. And I'm very responsive. I'd be happy to consult with current customers, prospects, just people that maybe you're working with a competitor, but you want to hear more information about what we have to say about TCPA or whatever it is, right? Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to consult with you. And we can go from there. I really appreciate, Andy, you putting me on this platform to be able to connect with agents and really give value. Because again, similarly to what we talked about with agencies, doing this for a reason, like I'm doing this for a reason too. And the way that I can go to bed feeling happy about what I'm doing is by giving value to agents and hearing feedback that, hey, this really helped me, right? And this really, changed my business. And that's, that goes such a long way for me and my fulfillment, right?
Absolutely, man. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure to post out links and everything inside the restream. But I could tell you from experience, like I've worked with tons and tons of vendors over the past 5 years as I've been in this space. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of sharks out there that are just looking for commission, and they'll tell you whatever you want to hear as an agent to get your business, and then leave you to figure out the pieces later. I know for a fact these guys do the exact opposite of that and come in with an attitude of how can we serve, how can we build it. So we always recommend agents over to you guys because we're like, you need a partner. You need somebody who understands the lead game, will work through issues with you if you have them, and be a good long-term partner. And you guys have been nothing short of that. So I really appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. And also to our audience, I appreciate you stepping in today to learn a lot more about the lead game. I encourage you to reach out to Andrew and his team. They are a world-class act. And we will be back with you next week at 10:30 Eastern time. Same place, same time on another episode of Ask the Experts. But Andrew, one more time, thank you so much for joining us today.
Likewise.
And to our audience, have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you.